UMGoBlue.com. By fans, for fans. Since 1999.
Hello. Welcome to this edition of the UMGoBlue.com podcast. This is Phil Callihan along with
Clint Derringer.
Be the guardian of victory is probably the number one job. You have making sure that the decisions you're making are complementary on all three phases. There's no offense, there's no defense. It's a we fence, and making sure that putting the players in position to have their hard work achieved.
And we're here to talk about Michigan's second victory of the year in their second game of the year, winning by a score of 35-7 over UNLV. Well, Clint, what'd you think about that one?
I thought it looked a lot like the first week, which is a lot of positive, almost all positive. Certainly you want to take a W. You want to come out relatively healthy. And those happened. Both of those things are true. So those are the most important things. So it was a good week. I think there was, once you get to the detail level, there's some stuff that really jumps off the page positively. JJ McCarthy's performance, the defensive line performance, I think are even above expectations, and they were really high expectations. And I think there are some things that aren't living up to the expectations and maybe cause for concern. The offensive line performance, the run game execution, I would say is a little bit cause for concern. And I would say a little bit the health in the defensive backfield, not having Rod Moore make any appearance in 2 weeks and Will Johnson only playing a handful of snaps on Saturday, I think is a little bit concerning. If they're going to miss time, of course, these are the games we'd rather them miss. But that's how I came away from the game was, maybe 80-85% positive, feeling good about where they're at and what we've seen. But starting to see a little bit more clarity in where we might be concerned in order to be able to accomplish what this team wants to accomplish.
It did seem like practically a carbon copy of last week. Michigan scoring a touchdown in the first quarter, 2 touchdowns in the second quarter, 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, and then kind of snoozing through the fourth quarter as we got to see a lot of the subs in and giving up a late score, giving up a touchdown this time instead of a field goal as time expired last week. So, my impression was I'm happy, but I wasn't wowed by anything. Like, it seemed like a very workman-like, practice, scrimmage-like exhibition, which is good. Again, I mean, you definitely don't want to see a loss, and you don't want to see anybody go down. But, again, you mentioned, I keep waiting for Blake Corum and or Donovan Edwards to just bust out with a monster run. Haven't seen that. Again, JJ looks next level at this point.
JJ is phenomenal. He so on fire, so on point. The throws that he is making, from the pocket. He's doing severe damage when he leaves the pocket, keeps his eyes downfield, and getting big chunk plays and yardage. Receivers, the explosive plays, the plus 15s, are just huge. The kind of throws he's making too. They're NFL caliber throws into tight windows. The accuracy is off the charts. He's putting balls, 6 inches in front of the number. Even the throws that are, covering 30, 40 yards. They're right on the number. A real runner's ball where the receiver can catch and run like you saw in the 47-yarder to Roman Wilson. J.J. McCarthy's a once-in-a-generation quarterback here at Michigan or anywhere.
Roman Wilson looks great again. But, again, there are some little things to pick at.
What I really wanted to see in the second game, and I kind of put this in a lot of my pregame commentary, was I wanted to make that comparison. Harbaugh mentioned that they were going to use the Michigan method of kind of stretching the position battle into the regular season. And through the first 2 weeks, we really didn't see that. It was the same starting pair of tackles in game 1 and game 2, with Carson Barnhart at the left tackle and Miles Hinton at the right tackle. So not being able to make that comparison was, disappointment for me personally, but also strange that there were such strong implications that those battles would probably continue to go on. And now it sounds like maybe they've settled on those guys as the starting 5. So just questions about what happened there. I think we've seen Trente Jones on the field, certainly more so than Ladarius Henderson, but to not really feel like those guys got equal number of snaps through the first 2 games in order to compare, then that tells us that something's going on that we can't see, something in practice or something else with performance based that has kind of made that decision for the team. So I think the offensive line's still got a lot of cleaning up to do. I don't think that they are getting to their blocks as squarely as we were used to seeing. Guys are slipping off the blocks a little bit more easily and making tackles at the line of scrimmage. So I really think that there's still room for this offensive line to grow. And then I think a couple other position groups that maybe we haven't mentioned that are impacting the run game under the radar is, last year at tight end, you had Luke Schoonmaker. He really, I think, was kind of an unsung hero of that running game, the way that he was like a lead blocker a lot of times on those pulling power plays and counter plays. So I think that the shift from Schoonmaker last year to, AJ Barner and a little bit of Max Bredesen, a little bit of Colston Loveland, I think we've kind of taken a step back as a blocker at the tight end position, at least for right now. And again, those guys have time to develop and certainly room to grow. So that's one thing that's impacting us. And then even more, I would say pronounced is the wide receiver blocking. There were times last year that we saw Ronnie Bell like motion in to the line of scrimmage and kind of act as an insert lead blocker, as a wide receiver, a slot receiver. And he was just that good at the point of attack as a blocker that sometimes they treated him like a tight end on the field. And right now, we're not seeing the same thing out of the outside wide receivers. And really that, I think, is a big change with what we were used to seeing with Blake and with Edwards making those long runs, right? So when we've seen 15 and 20-yard runs this year, maybe those were 60 and 70-yard runs last year. And I think that's probably because the perimeter blocking right now from the wide receivers is not as good as what we had gotten used to last year with, especially with Ronnie Bell on the edge.
So an interesting thing I noticed looking at the stats. So Blake Corum ended up with 80 yards, 15 carries for 80 yards. But if you go down to Donovan Edwards, 6 for 9. And, 6 carries for 9 yards, that blows my mind for how good Donovan is, right? And then conversely, when you go down and look at, because we'd heard about that they wanted to get Donovan more involved in the passing game. So when you drop down to the receiving stats, Donovan had 5 receptions for 26 yards. Again, not spectacular. And Blake had 2 receptions for 23 yards. So it's just weird when you look at it that I think they're struggling to find the right play call and the right fit for Donovan Edwards. And it's just weird to see him. I don't think you can say he's struggling, but it's weird to see the plays that he's in not exactly executing well. And, he doesn't seem to be frustrated by it. Again, there's a lot of talk about trusting the process and seeing things. But it's interesting to me because there was one play where Blake almost broke out, right? Mm-hmm. And he got tripped up, which we're not used to seeing, right? After, last year he would usually pull away. And he seemed to be really frustrated beating on the ground, right?
Yeah, definitely not satisfied with my performance today. Definitely feel like, I could have done more, with what I was given. It's part of the process, of coming back. I was talking to our strength coach, Coach Herb, and I was like, dang, I feel like I'm getting there. I just want to be there, though. He's like, man, trust the process, And so I feel like I'm almost there, man. Almost there. Those runs that y'all saw me do last year, those tackles you guys saw me break last year, it's almost there. It's coming, but definitely not satisfied today. Great team win. Me personally, I'm always hard on myself, so definitely going back to the drawing board, seeing where I can get better, and come back next week, guns blazing.
When you see J.J. McCarthy, 22 for 25, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and again had that 147-yard scoring play, which was really meaningful. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it just seems like the passing game is clicking.
This year, the passing game is hitting on all cylinders, phenomenal. The quarterback, it's a point now to be. The goal is, we're 2 steps into the process, 2 games in with JJ, and we'll come back and reload for the 3rd one. But the goal is for JJ to be the best quarterback in the country on the best football team, and we got to get that with the running game too. I want the best backs on the best team as well, and I know we're going to get there. So I'm excited to.
Even if the receivers aren't blocking, that's definitely something they say they take pride in. Roman talked about in the preseason about wanting to be a really dominant blocker, and I'm not sure that we've seen that yet, as you mentioned, but we are seeing the passing game seemingly catch gear, and I just don't feel that we're there yet on the rushing game.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and I think catching gear is the same phrase that I would think of. That, like, the parts are there. Like, Donovan Edwards is still a tremendous talent at the running back position. Blake Corum still has the capacity to be a Heisman candidate that we saw last year, make guys miss in the hole. But that play that you mentioned where he was one-on-one with the safety and got tackled, that didn't happen in 2022. So I think he's just kind of getting up to speed personally. It's probably going to take another game or 2 for him to kind of knock the rust off, coming off of surgery in the offseason. And then so much with offense is timing and routine and then timing all of the adjustments. And I think settling on a starting 5 should help that. Even though it's somewhat strange that we didn't see the competition that we thought. But if they settle on a starting 5 and these guys can be the first unit going forward and start getting more and more snaps together, then I think we'll see that kind of gel. And I think the last thing that I would say is a little bit under the radar here with the run game and with the offense is, the suspension with Harbaugh and with Sherrone Moore in the first week. Again, it's awfully chaotic on a sideline and on the headsets on a normal game, right? And to have head coaches switching at halftime and everybody's got different jobs by week. Harbaugh's involved in the game planning. Of course, he's there throughout the whole week. He's just not there on Saturday. I'm sure that it's having an impact. And again, I think that's kind of an invisible hand right now that's depressing a little bit of the offensive performance. But what it's not, what hasn't really suffered at all is what J.J. McCarthy is able to do right now. What he is doing in terms of execution is just absolutely the sharpest that I've seen a Michigan quarterback look that I can remember. And what I mean is not just throwing the ball, although of course that's really great as it has been. He's very accurate, hitting guys in stride. Something like 87% completion percentage. I think, what is it? 7 incomplete passes in 2 weeks is amazing. But he's seeing so much more than just his receiver. He's manipulating linebackers and safeties with his eyes. He's kind of feeling the rush, stepping up into the pocket, throwing the ball on the run, really still staying on time and in rhythm, even though his feet are moving when he's off the spot, and still doing it with a high degree of accuracy. So to be able to see down the field and kind of use your peripheral vision or your feel in the pocket to avoid the rush, move your feet, and still deliver on time, in rhythm, accurately is it's a lot harder to say than it is, or it's a lot harder to do than it is for me to say it. So for him to be doing that at a very high level is stuff that translates to tougher opponents, right? Like, so the passing concepts, the receivers being open, teams selling out against the run and kind of leaving their corners or secondary one-on-one with the receivers. That might change from game to game. Other more talented teams might be able to do different things, but physically what JJ McCarthy is doing and putting that in connection with how much quicker he's processing the information in front of him mentally, that is really the big difference. And what we should be most excited about right now is the leap that it seems like JJ McCarthy has taken in his third year here as quarterback.
Coach Harbaugh was, while he may not have been at the game, he did watch the game, and he was very lavish with his praise today for JJ. And I think it's what we see, but when you have somebody as experienced as Coach Harbaugh saying similar things.
It's always been in a lot of ways. He's an igniter. He sets the tone, no matter what he's doing with his energy. It's always by example. It's always infectious. It's always encouraging, and the thing that stands out the most is he's about the team. He's never comes off about himself, and he's willing to do anything for anybody on the entire team. No matter what, I don't know how it works in other businesses, but in football, what your antenna, always tries to pick up, or always the first thing it tries to pick up, what's in another man's heart? Is he about us, or is he about himself? And human beings got really good antenna for that. They say a dog has really good antenna. Is the person gonna feed him? Gonna be nice to him? Gonna treat him well? Not treat him well? Dogs are really good at that. Human beings are about 900 times better at picking that up than a dog. And JJ's he's that kind of guy. He will take others and he'll raise them up and lower himself to raise a teammate up, as opposed to the guy who pushes other people down and raises themselves up. And I truly believe when it comes to leadership for a quarterback, that's the secret, And every guy knows. Everybody guys on the team knows what's in JJ's heart. He's not about himself. He's about the team.
And Sherrone Moore was going on and on about JJ and Cornelius Johnson. I think it's safe to say we're all seeing really good things there.
Mm-hmm.
I think, my concern, and again, it's a long season, right, is that it's great to see JJ run, but, man, 3 carries for 38 yards. Even Sherrone Moore talked today.
I just want him to get down and get out of bounds. So there is always, whenever he pulls the ball or he takes off running, there's always that until he gets out of bounds or gets down. But he's a hockey player at heart, so he's a physical mentality. I call him a psychopath sometimes, and he loves it. I'm like, dude, you got to get down. He's like, I want that contact, coach. So, but no, we'd much rather him get down.
And again, you like to see that on one level, but it is a long season, and it only takes, I always used to say when you're watching a running quarterback, run, they're going to catch you eventually, right? And when they catch you, it's usually not pretty. And it's one thing to be running against UNLV. You can out-athlete those guys. You hope that you do that very rarely as the season moves on. And hopefully you don't need to do it. It's definitely something you want opponents to worry about and have to scheme for. But I don't want to see JJ taking off and running all that often, as a matter of course.
And there's something to be said also. The quarterback run is a big part of what Michigan has done to attack the edge in the last couple of years. JJ McCarthy 2 years ago, that was his main role, right? And then last year they mixed it in a little bit as he took over the starting role. That used to be how they attack the edge, and it may be their best option this year to attack the edge. But like you said, they don't want to call that, very frequently in the games, especially early on here because it's a long season. And some of what we might be seeing on the offensive line and the running backs is they may be trying some other options in terms of run scheme on how to attack the edge. So when teams have stuffed the box or are just focusing on driving the offensive lineman back, kind of going 2-on-1 against an offensive lineman to drive him back to create disruption, then Michigan is using some other play schemes to try to hit the edge. And when we get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, I think Michigan's a lot more likely to call the stuff that they are good at and have been good at. And some of that stuff we haven't seen yet. So there are other reasons that the run game has looked out of sync. That's why I would say that it's become a minor concern for me. It's nothing to panic about right now because we know all of these guys are good. All of those linemen are solid to above average to All-American at different positions on the line. You've got an All-American and a potential All-American at running back. The run game's going to come together. It's a matter of when and how quickly and is it in time for the biggest games. And I think looking at the schedule, they should be okay.
Another thing kind of above the game is that J.J. McCarthy hit Roman Wilson for a 47-yard touchdown.
From the get-go, I knew we were going to have a good play because it looked like they were playing their tight quarters or cover zero, one of the two. And I just wanted to get a hard, heavy run action and turned around and saw I was a little bit pressure to the right, so I slid a little bit, and I was going to throw it back across the field to 6, but I was like, not today. No, those days are kind of over. But then I saw Roman just, get a little bit of separation and stepped up and just gave it to him. I didn't hear that the 47-yard touchdown until I just walked down this hallway, and I was just like, damn, that's not God. I don't know what is. Seriously.
I mean, that's just JJ, bro. I just saw the play. The way he stepped up in the pocket, that's a vet play. I'm just doing my job. I wasn't sure if I was gonna go over or under the nickel. I decided to go under and just went with speed. And I just see him step up in the pocket and make a throw. I'm in open field. I gotta score. That's just it's just something I gotta do.
And the significance of that is that UNLV had a player pass away in the offseason that McCarthy was extremely close to. His number was 47. And McCarthy wrote that on his hand, and then he threw for a 47-yard pass. So, very interesting. And again, it's a nice tribute. I think people forget sometimes that as much as these guys are competitors, there is something, bigger than the game. And, that was a nice little tribute. And again, quite kind of weird that, that was a 47-yard touchdown and number 47. So, again, kind of interesting. So,
and hearing on the broadcast also that they happened to be talking about that detail at that moment leading into the snap, right? That's when they did the spotlight and were telling the story, and the next snap is the 47-yard touchdown. So there was definitely, it was a heart. Really tugged at the heartstrings right at that moment, and I think you could even hear it in the CBS announcers' voices. It was quite a moment. Certainly something that will be memorable for a long time. Hopefully for his family and for JJ.
Absolutely. Another thing that I saw that I was happy about is we did see a little more distribution among the wide receivers. Saw Tyler Morris get involved early. 3 receptions for 40 yards. So again, that was one of the things I was looking for. I didn't want to see the usual suspects. And, because again, we know we have good receivers in Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson. So it was great to see Tyler Morris get some reps in there. Again, we're seeing Donovan Edwards go out a lot. And I think they just need to find the right fit and the right scheme to get him busted loose. I like what they're trying to do, right? But between him and Blake, they had 7 receptions and 49 yards. So that's, 7 yards per, that's okay. But I think when you think about getting those guys in space with their athleticism and speed, I think you're looking for a little bit more, and they're still trying to find that combination.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's as simple to say as I like a lot of what they're doing in the play calling. I think they're kind of overcoming the chaos with the coaching situation, and the passing game just looks more in sync than the running game. And I still have very high expectations that it will come together, and it'll be very good when it does. So the question for me now becomes when. When does it come together? How quickly?
So we touched on it briefly. You had split head coaches this game. You had Jay Harbaugh start out, and then you had Mike Hart take over in the second half. And that's notable. Again, I think it's great that it's the first time you have a son of a former Michigan player being head coach, even if it was briefly. And then you had Mike Hart, who's the first African American head coach at Michigan, and we're going to follow it up this week with Sherrone Moore being the head coach for the interim head coach for the whole game. So you could tell what's really nice is so a lot of fans have a great connection to Michigan football and love the tradition and love what it means. And it's very clear when Mike Hart talks.
It's really just a great honor, this is my university. I played here. This place changed my life. And to have that opportunity to always say I was the first African-American head coach here is huge.
And he's very clear he wants to be a head coach somewhere. It won't be here right away, but you could tell it really meant a lot to him to be able to come out of the tunnel and be leading a team at Michigan Stadium where he was such a successful player. And, he's just continued on after his career to stay involved in the game and stay involved at Michigan. And, I know there were people wondering, when he came over from Indiana, how successful he was going to be here. He was kind of a late addition to the staff when he came. And I think, his success here has resonated. He's really set a high standard and is really setting himself up for success at whatever his next job may be, wherever that may be.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think it's very, I would say Harbaugh probably would call it a silver lining, just like he mentioned being on the sideline for the chain gang for his kids' game on Saturday. It's a very nice silver lining to a dark cloud that I'm excited to move past. But if this had to happen, if there had to be interim coaches, I think putting Mike Hart's name in the record books and into another spot in Michigan lore is appropriate. He's a legend at the university and the program, and adding to that portfolio of what he means to the program is a silver lining for sure. So it's a nice touch, I would say, early on in this season.
So there were things we liked, and you talked about a few things you didn't like. One thing I didn't like is I really don't like this running clock. I know we talked about it a little bit before. It really seems like the game flies by, and what I totally hated was when I watched the replay of the game to prepare for podcasts and articles, it just seems like it's commercial after commercial. So,
well, I think the defensive line, I'll start with the positive. I think the defensive line has taken the leap forward in a similar shape as to what we're talking about with J.J. McCarthy. I mean, Chris Jenkins has performed up to expectations, and they were sky-high expectations. I had very, very high hopes for Mason Graham, the other tackle, and I think he's exceeding them. So what we saw in flashes last year when he was a freshman, he is doing consistently now as a sophomore. So he is almost unblockable at least once per 3 play series. At least one time it seems like he gets into the backfield almost untouched, and he is doing it consistently on every series. And then I would say the guy who is way, way above expectations and is all, the cherry on top right now on the defensive line is Kenneth Grant, who may be the guy that's creating the most pass rush on the interior. I would have definitely thought it would have been one of those other two guys, but it seems like Kenneth Grant is the guy who is the beneficiary of some of the stunts and twists that Mike Elston's drawing up. And he really is showing a lot of athleticism for just a mountain of a man. And it's been amazing to see those guys on the interior. I think on the edge, we're seeing, I think they're slightly better than I expected. But the biggest positive on the edge and really through the linebacker core too is that the depth concerns that I had, I worry about it a little bit less. I think we have 4 edge players, I think, that all are starter caliber. So if we do go through a spell of injuries, we can handle 1 or 2 on the edge without major drop-off, I would say. And at the linebacking position, I was worried that it was kind of the 2 starters were back, Mike Barrett and Junior Colson, and we didn't really know who was going to emerge as the third guy, an inside linebacker. And Hausman has been nearly no drop-off from the 2 starters, and he's playing both positions. So it really brings kind of a 3-man rotation to cover those 2 spots. And I have much less concern now about the defensive depth than I did. And then my final point about the depth is kind of the other side of the coin that I mentioned earlier. We are experiencing some injuries in the secondary, like no Makari Page, no Rod Moore, very little Will Johnson so far through 2 games. But you don't really see that on the field. And these guys that are the second and third stringers are being pushed into starter duty, definitely playing a lot more snaps than we would have expected. And I think they've been really good. I think they've been not just adequate, but even a step better than adequate. I think they've been good. Keon Saab, especially. I really like the corners that are rotating. I saw Jaden McBurrows is taking over at the nickel spot when Mikey Sainer still has moved outside in corner. So there are probably 3 or 4 defensive backs that have emerged and, again, have been fine. And I didn't know that to be the case before the season, and now I think we're okay. And we're showing right now that the secondary would also be okay as we go through a spell of injuries here. So that's another huge positive.
Okay. They could have very easily thrown 2 shutouts here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you had the 1 field goal as time expired and you had the last touchdown, but that is the very definition of garbage time. Okay. I mean, mega garbage time. And so it's easy to look at, the exciting plays of JJ hooking up with Roman Wilson for touchdowns and questioning why Blake is only running for 80 yards, right? But when you get away from that and look at what's happening on the defensive side, it's in some ways more amazing than the offense, okay? When you think about the guys who are out, when you think about the players who they're replacing, the defense really is next man up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This is the 3rd consecutive year in the preseason that I've had moderately high expectations for the defense, and it was, I underestimated them. I underestimated Mike McDonald 2 years ago. I underestimated the change to Jesse Minter last year, and I underestimated how well they'd be able to fill the gaps in their depth chart on the 2 deep this year. And they've shown that not only have the next wave of starters taken a step forward and increased production right now at the defensive line level, but the depth has not shown itself to be a concern at all. I cannot think of one play where there was a clear mishap, a mental mistake or blown coverage or missed tackle that led to a really monster play. There have been, of course, nobody's perfect. No unit is perfect, but the mistakes have been small, and most of that is because they're getting 11 guys to the ball. So if one guy misses, the next guy can clean up and make the plays, and that's what you really want to see. So hats off to the staff. Jesse Minter, his whole defensive staff. I think Mike Elston is again doing a whale of a job with alignment, and to the players, of course. The upperclassmen who are acting as leaders, and the younger guys that are stepping into big shoes and filling them just fine.
Now it's early in the season, and I want to contain my excitement a little bit, just a little bit. But who believed in the defense all along was the defensive players themselves. I remember last year, you're in the shadow of Aiden Hutchinson leaving, right? And the defensive players are like, we got this, right? And that's how I feel watching it this year. You have Chris Jenkins, you have Mike Sainristil, you have Mason Graham, you have guys who are just getting it done and embodying, team. They don't need the spotlight. It's all about the team.
From 2020 into 2021 was just a Herculean effort. Those guys that led the program, like Aiden Hutchinson and Brad Hawkins and Josh Ross and Hassan Haskins, those guys, to turn the ship, right, took such a monumental effort. But it's been a really tremendous effort also to maintain that level with a new wave of guys, a new wave of leaders, and to really execute the handoff of the program culture from one group of leaders to another group of leaders is a very good sign, right? It shows that there is something strong building at the foundational level, and of course that's very positive. And again, we've commended the players and the coaching staff for being able to do all of this and maintain this high level of focus and execution amidst all kinds of different distractions and craziness. So really, it's really great in the short term, like you're saying, to see it up close and to hear it from the players and from the coaches. But really, that's a long-term excitement kind of thing, that the program right now is really putting down some deep roots into the ground and hopefully can maintain some stability and not only climb to the top here, but kind of carve out a place and create a seat up here at the top of the mountain for the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, do you have any final words, Clint?
I looked your note about the running clock. Of course, I agree. We talked about that in the off season. I don't like the rule change, and as of through 2 games, Michigan has run 4 fewer offensive series, and the other teams have run 4 fewer, defensive series. So it has cost Michigan to this point 4 times touching the ball, 2 times each game. So I'll keep an eye on that through the rest of the season. We can compare, years past to this year. But not only is it the number of plays that's reducing, but you're touching the ball fewer times per game. And I think maybe some of the offensive outputs and the score predictions probably need to start taking that into consideration.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the UMGoBlue.com podcast. This is Phil Callihan along with
Clint Derringer.
Go Blue.
It's the beauty of my dad's mantra. Attack each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. It just frames it right there. Attack each day. Attack this day with enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And living by it daily, and it's been good. It's worked.
Thank you for listening to the UMGoBlue.com podcast. All rights reserved. search for umgoblue.com on iTunes. Go Blue.